lot of people have been asking me to make this video. They want to know how good would the Houston Texans offense be this upcoming season in 2020. Now, a lot of people think just because Houston Texans, Bill O'Brien traded away DeAndre Hopkins for basically a bag of chips and a Sprite and David Johnson, that is going to keep them from making it to the playoffs. And I don't believe that, right? Because somebody tell me the last time a team with a top 5 wide receiver won the Super Bowl. It's been a very, very long time since a team with a top 5 wide receiver actually won the Super Bowl. I think the last time a team with a top 5 wide receiver won the Super Bowl was probably the 2006 Indianapolis Colts. So having an elite wide receiver is not really all that of a necessity when it comes to being able to win a Super Bowl. Now I get it. DeAndre Hopkins was a big part of the Houston Texans offense. The Houston Texans offense, without a doubt, is probably going to take a step back, but it's not going to be that big of a step back. The wide receiver core is still solid. Now you get Brandon Cooks. Now look, Brandon Cooks, aside from this past year, the last couple of years he's been in the NFL, he's been a 1,000-yard wide receiver ever since his second year in the NFL. Now, last year, he battled injuries. He had like ankle injuries. He battled with concussions and things like that. But other than last season, he's been a 1,000-yard wide receiver ever since his second year in the NFL. Now, Brandon Cooks, in my opinion, isn't an elite wide receiver or anything like that. But he's a good wide receiver. He is an above-average wide receiver. Right? Now, you're not going to get the same production out of Brandon Cooks that you got out of DeAndre Hopkins. But what I am saying is that Brandon Cooks is pretty solid. Now, you also get Will Fuller. Now, I believe that if Will Fuller stays healthy, that he's a Pro Bowler. In my opinion. The only thing that's holding Will Fuller back from reaching his true potential is him not being able to stay healthy. So, you got 2 injury-prone wide receivers. Then you also got Keke QT. Now, Keke QT had a really nice rookie season, but last year he also got dealt the bad hand with injuries. Then when he did come back, Kenny Stills, who they got from the Miami Dolphins, ended up stepping up and basically taking away Keke QT's snaps and targets. Now, they also picked up Randall Cobb in free agency. So, I mean, although they did lose DeAndre Hopkins, the wide receiving core, in my opinion, isn't really that bad. I think the wide receiving core is the least of the Houston Texans' problems, right? Now, they got David Johnson, who a lot of people aren't really all that sold on David Johnson, mainly because of his contract and his inability to stay healthy, right? But when David Johnson came back in 2018, he had 940 rushing yards. His season for Arizona in 2018, in my opinion, was pretty overlooked, right? Now, a lot of people want to be like, oh, JT, he didn't even have 1,000 yards rushing. When you look at that Arizona Cardinals team, that was not really a good team that he was playing with, right? So I felt in 2018, David Johnson had a pretty okay season. Now, last year, his season got derailed with injuries, and ever since he was All-Pro for Arizona, a lot of people consider him washed up. But sometimes, all it takes is a change of scenery for a player to bounce back. Maybe the Houston Texans, playing for a new team, a new organization, is what David Johnson needs to get his career back on track. Because, look, in 2018, his season wasn't all that bad, in my opinion. Yeah, he probably underperformed for all you fantasy football lovers out there. But, I mean, from a real-life football standpoint, I don't think David Johnson was that bad. So, if David Johnson is able to be healthy this year, I think that he should be able to have some success. Because, look, a lot of people don't realize this, but Carlos Hyde was a 1,000-yard rusher playing for the Houston Texans last year, behind a less than stellar offensive line. So if Carlos Hyde can be a 1,000-yard rusher, I have confidence that David Johnson can be a 1,000-yard rusher. Because Carlos Hyde wasn't all that great of a halfback. At most, he was average in a lot of people's eyes, right? Now, while a lot of people are worried about the wide receiver position and the halfback position and things like that, I think the thing that people need to be worried about the most when it comes to this Houston Texans offense is the offensive line. This offensive line really scares me. In my opinion, you only got 2 really solid offensive linemen. You got Laremy Tunsil, one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL, and you got center Nick Martin. And that's pretty much it, right? You got right tackle Titus Howard, who is really young. He still has a lot of ways to go in development. But, I mean, the offensive line, in my opinion, is probably the biggest concern that I have about the Houston Texans, right? Now, Now I feel the Houston Texans offense will take a step back, right? But I don't feel they're necessarily going to be terrible. As long as you got Deshaun Watson at the quarterback position, you're always going to be respectable on offense. It doesn't matter if you even have the worst wide receiving core in the NFL or anything like that. As long as you got Deshaun Watson as your quarterback, you're always going to be a legitimate threat on the offensive side of football. And I think a lot of people really overlook the impact that Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson really have on their team. Without Deshaun Watson, this Houston Texans team probably doesn't even win 4 games. That's how big of an impact Deshaun Watson has. Without Russell Wilson being the starting quarterback in Seattle, Seattle probably doesn't even win 5 games themselves, right? So I think a lot of people overlook Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson in terms of what they do for their respective teams, right? And without DeAndre Hopkins, I still think Deshaun Watson is still going to be able to flourish. He's still going to remain one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL because he's really talented. His ability to improvise, his ability to extend plays, extend time in the pocket and things like that, able to get out the pocket and rush for 20, 30, 40 yards and things like that. So, I mean, as long as the Houston Texans are able to keep the Deshaun Watson healthy, I think this Houston Texans offense is still going to be respectable. I don't think it's going to be one of the worst offenses in football. I don't think it's going to flop. Listen, my biggest concern is the offensive line. That's pretty much it. The wide receiver position, all the wide receiver position doesn't look necessarily stellar. I don't think the wide receiver position for the Houston Texans is all that bad because the Carolina Panthers went to the Super Bowl back in 2015 with their best wide receiver probably being Ted Ginn and Greg Olsen, who was a tight end. We also got to talk about the tight end position. I think the tight end position for Houston is also pretty solid. You got Darren Fells and you got Jordan Thomas. So, I mean, when it comes to the weapons that Deshaun Watson is going to have next year at his disposal, when it comes to the passing game, I think it's going to be pretty solid. Now, I know it's going to be weird seeing this offense without DeAndre Hopkins, but I don't really think they're going to have that big of a drop-off, right? I mean, look at what teams have did when they got rid of their star wide receivers. Like, look at the New York Giants, for example, right? Now, they got rid of Odell Beckham. They went from the 16th best offense in the NFL to the 19th best offense in the NFL without Odell Beckham. That's not that big of a drop-off. When the Detroit Lions had Calvin Johnson in 2015, they were 18th in total offense. Without Calvin Johnson in 2016, they only dropped to 20th in the NFL in total offense. So really, when teams get rid of their star wide receivers, they don't really have that big of a drop-off offensively. So I'm not really all that concerned about the receiver position. I don't think having a great wide receiver makes or breaks you when it comes to your ability to win games and compete for a Super Bowl. Because teams have won with worse at the receiver position. Really worse. So, I mean, DeAndre Hopkins is a big loss and all, but I mean, this Houston Texans offense, in my opinion, probably won't take that big of a step back. As long as you have Deshaun Watson healthy, I think you're still going to be pretty respectable on offense. You got David Johnson back there. I think David Johnson should have a career resurgence because, like I said, if Carlos Hyde can have success playing for the Houston Texans, I believe that David Johnson, as a lot of people consider David Johnson washed up and things like that, but I still feel he can have some success if Carlos Hyde was able to have success. And a lot of people looked at Carlos Hyde as the average halfback, right? But like I said, Bill O'Brien, the DeAndre Hopkins trade was a bad move all around. No getting over that. But I think the biggest concern I have about this Houston Texans offense is the offensive line. So basically, to sum up this video, how good would the Houston Texans offense be? I think it will probably be a little bit worse than what it was last season. But like I said, it should still pretty much be in the middle of the pack. I don't think this offense is going to be one of the worst offenses in the NFL. I don't think it's going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL. I still think this offense is still going to be a pretty much respectable and productive offense. It's not going to be an offense that's going to light up the scoreboard and things like that. But I don't think the Houston Texans are going to end up being one of the worst offenses in the NFL, like some people may think, just because they got rid of DeAndre Hopkins. This offense still has talent. They still have Deshaun Watson, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, underneath center. So I still think this Houston Texans offense will be around middle of the pack in the NFL. So I say they'll probably be around that 15 to 19 range if you guys had to ask me a ranking. So I think this Houston Texans offense still will be productive, even though they won't be as productive with the loss of DeAndre Hopkins. But like I said, having an elite top 5 wide receiver doesn't make or break you when it comes to your ability to be able to compete for a Super Bowl or make the playoffs. Because I've seen teams make it to the Super Bowl and win in the playoffs with far less at the wide receiver position. Look at the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills' best receiver was John Brown. Okay, so the Buffalo Bills can have success with John Brown. That's their number 1 wide receiver. I'm pretty sure the Houston Texans can have success with their current supporting cast of wide receivers. Now, like I said, the biggest thing that scares me is this offensive line. If the offensive line was really solid and they didn't only have 2 reliable offensive linemen that I was really sold on, then I think this Houston Texans offense could be a lot better. But the offensive line is pretty much the biggest concern. A lot of people are more focused on the wide receiver position than they are the offensive line. So I still think the Houston Texans offense will still be around where they left off last year, but just a tad bit worse. But I don't think we'll see all that big of a drop-off compared to where this Houston Texans offense was offensively last season. So let me know what you guys think about the Houston Texans offense this upcoming NFL season. Do you guys think the Houston Texans will even make the playoffs this upcoming season? Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and content, and thanks for watching.